Okay, so we're going to talk through our presentation today. So we've got Mike Hill from LeisureNet, we've got Utku from 4Global and Data Hub, and Lisa from Max Associates. I am recording this session, so you will have seen the message saying recording just come up. Please can I ask you that you keep your cameras on if you wish, but please mute your system so that we don't get any background noise as we go through. And if you can put questions into the Q&A throughout the session, we'll try and answer them as part of the presentation, but we also have a slot at the end of this to allow us to answer those questions that we've not been able to answer in the presentation. Next slide, please, Mike. So the agenda for today, we're going to be talking about why moving communities, what's important about it, the features and benefits. We're going to give you an update as to the numbers so far, which will include an early picture of participation and finance, the customer experience survey, and also the social value information that we've been able to glean. We're going to do a demonstration of the dashboard so that you've got the ability to get into your dashboard and have a look at the detail of information either from your sites or from your area. And we're going to talk about how to change this insight into action so that we really start to use the data to create actionable intelligence. And then we're going to have a Q&A. Could I ask again, please, if you've just joined us, could you please mute your microphones? We are getting a little bit of interference at the moment. Mike, if you could go to the next slide, please. And this is just a reminder of who the partners in moving communities are. Again, could I ask, could you please mute your microphones so that we don't get background noise. So the partners in this are LeisureNet Solutions, 4Global and Data Hub, Max Associates, together with Sheffield Hallam University, who are supporting the social value calculation, and of course, Right Directions, who are delivering the Quest Prime assessments that are part of this process. We wanted to just reinforce to you all that moving communities is not just about the data. It's not just about customers completing a customer survey or you uploading your expenditure and your finance data. This is about what you do with that information. And this slide tries to give an idea of the benefits that we can all have by using this, broken up into our three core partner areas of local authorities, operators, and Sport England from a national point of view. And it's become more and more apparent that the automated reports are going to be a really valuable measurement tool and management tool going forward. And for local authorities to be able to use that with portfolio holders and cabinet members to give some real information that's not just about finance, because of the social value, the experience, the quality, and of course participation. It's going to give a much better picture of what is happening. And that's going to be really useful for the operators as well. But more importantly, well, not more importantly, equally importantly, from a Sport England point of view, is about influencing national strategy and going forward, what should we be doing and how should this affect the 10-year strategy currently of Sport England? We can obviously, because of the ability to look at this from a benchmarking point of view, from a site base and a location base, we can start looking at how the services that we all offer are contributing to local communities and how we're making a difference. And that then links, of course, to how we can really start using this data, this holistic data of what's happening within our buildings to help officers make really clear investment opportunities. Also, we can compare performance as an operator across our different contracts. But the interesting piece from my point of view is how Sport England start using this with national partners, such as active partnerships and governing bodies, to really start understanding how we can all contribute to getting people active, to improving people's wellness and helping people live better lives. Mike, over to you. I apologise, it's Utku, isn't it?
Yeah, over to you, Utku.
Thank you very much, Dave. Hi, everyone. And thank you, Dave, for the nice intro. So we have had another workshop a few months back, and we have gone through this slide, but we use this one to intro to the next section of the presentation. So today we are at a stage where we have done the hard work thanks to all your great efforts in the past month in terms of getting a lot of data into the platform. And today we will be launching the analysis and dashboards as part of this presentation. So first of all, just to remind everyone what type of data has been going into the platform and what data has been submitted to date will be the first part of our workshop today. So if we start from bottom up, we have collected a lot of data from leisure management systems in terms of participation data, a lot of income and expenditure data coming out from the finance systems of the operators. Then we have run a user survey that's still open and the data still continues to flow in about. We have started collecting a lot of information from the Quest assessments, which have recently started for the collection of the service delivery information. So all of this data is going into our green line where we have the database, the moving communities database, and this is powering 6 different dashboards, which is about participants, visits, social value, finance, customer experience, and service delivery. Then we have set up a number of user levels on top of that, which are accessing the platform and seeing different views from Sport England and the national view to local authorities and operators. And in the next few slides, we are going to go through each of these user levels and what they can access it in which format. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Mike. So a little bit of update of where we are and what we have done in the past couple of months. So in end of March, we have launched the platform and we have run a couple of workshops in terms of how to get the data into the platform in April. So all of April and still the first week of May, we have been in touch with operators, local authorities to set up their logins, to collect all the finance and participation data and to launch their user surveys. Now in May, we are at a stage where we have all this data now in the platform and data checks being run. And by the end of this week, we will be opening the dashboards and analysis screens in the Moving Communities platform for all users. So in terms of the size of data in the platform, so on the finance data side, we have so far over 780 sites having submitted and checked their data. We have another 200 odd sites that are continue going through their data checks, and we are aiming to have that completed by the end of the week. In terms of participation data, we have over 1,000 sites having now completed their data submissions and data checks, and most of those are fully automated and some others through manual submissions. And finally, on the user surveys, we have launched about 2 weeks ago. There's been over 24,000 responses that's collected from 730 sites, and the rest is being collected as we speak as well. And finally, the Quest Prime assessments, the initial assessments have started to be run, and we have so far 17 assessments that are completed and feeding data into the platform. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Right. So in the next 4 or 5 slides, we will be going through different dashboard screens, the screenshots from those dashboard screens, which will share with you some initial findings that are feeding into the platform and that you can get those insights as soon as you have access to those dashboard screens. So we will be sharing some national level insights that we have drawn so far, but obviously then when we go into the demo section of the presentation, we will show you how you can use the filtering options to get the relevant views for your local authority, for your operator, or for your leisure centers. So the initial one, what we said is we have data from over 1,000 sites in terms of participation data are feeding into 2 separate dashboards, which are our participants dashboard and our visits throughput dashboard. So on the participants dashboard, some interesting insight you can find in there. We have set up our filters here for the April to March period, so that's a full financial year before and after COVID. And what it's showing us is the amount of impact COVID had in terms of the numbers that are feeding data into the platform. So we have over 20 million people that have been active in the platform in the pre-COVID period, and now this has been going down to 3.6 million in the after-COVID period. And you can see the top 4 KPIs on top of the screen in terms of female participant numbers, 65 plus participant numbers, and low seg numbers in terms of how the actual numbers have been impacted over the sector, and that's due to the multiple lockdowns we have seen, and also the restricted capacity that's gone into that time period. So as you can report your actual numbers in here, you can also see the change in participant structure before and after COVID period. So the two graphs you see below that, which are the example insight graphs that we have shared today, are showing the distribution of different age groups and deprivation before and after COVID period. So in the before COVID period, which is the right-hand side, the national 2020 picture in there, what we are seeing is there has been a slightly more balanced distribution of different age groups, especially a higher proportion of older adults that have been active in the leisure centers. Whereas if you look at the post-COVID picture, which is the national 2021 picture in there, what we are seeing is a decreasing percentage, especially in the 55 plus age groups. And on the left-hand side of the graph, what we are seeing is there's a higher proportion of 16 to 34-year-olds being active in leisure centers. And after the most recent lockdown, which is the post-April period when we reopened, we are seeing this picture coming through as well. I mean, obviously, we have still the April data to come into the Moving Communities platform, but early findings from data after the first few weeks of opening are showing us that the 16 to 34-year-olds have a higher representation in the leisure centers right now. That's partially linked to Group X not being available, but also there are also an impact of the changing demographics in our leisure center use as well. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, what we are seeing is the breakdown by deprivation. So again, an interesting picture here is a more balanced picture on the pre-COVID period. But if you look at the post-COVID picture, what you are seeing is a higher proportion of like 9 and 10, which are the lower deprivation areas returning or using the facilities, but especially on the higher deprivation parts, which is 1, 2, and 3 categories on the deprivation scale, they have been using the leisure centers more and less than compared to their peers. And again, this is the impact, the economic impact of COVID, and also the availability of their time and to go to use these facilities as well. In the most recent post-lockdown period, we are seeing slightly different picture in there, which we will come on later when we talk about it in the future stages of this presentation. I think the most important finding in here, or the key message in here, is now you have access to this data in your platform. You can get these views both for national, but also you are able to see your own views against that national picture as well. Mike, if you can go to the next slide. So as we have seen the participants view, which is the unique individuals, this is the view from the Throughput dashboard. So this is more about the visit numbers, the total Throughput numbers. Again, if you look at the left and right hand side of the screen with the two different graphs, they are showing the monthly Throughput numbers pre and post COVID periods, where you can see a clear impact of the COVID on the total Throughput numbers, and you can filter that data for your own sites as well, or for your own local authority pictures. The second part of the screen is showing us the distribution into the different activities in terms of that total Throughput. I mean, here the expected picture is obviously in the pre-COVID period, you have a more balanced distribution of activities, but due to the restrictions on the post-COVID period, on the full financial year, we have a much higher representation of the fitness gym activities. So more people accessing the gym floor and basically doing fitness activities compared to other sports and sports hall activities in there. So I will now switch to Lisa, who will speak about the finance section, but we will address some of the questions that have already started to come about the participation screens when I pick up later on the demo stage. So Lisa, over to you.
Thanks, Uktu. So we've then similar information in terms of finance. Obviously, this is coming straight through in terms of Moving Communities, because this information isn't available through Data Hub. And what we've picked up here, you'll see the top four are the four main, you can call them KPIs, They're also simple ratios. So in effect, you've got income per visit, operational costs per visit, then moving on to subsidy per visit, which if it's a surplus is a negative, just so the logic works there for those people from a maths background, and then percentage of cost recovery, which is in effect income divided by expenditure. So anything over 100% is a surplus. So again, just to show you the national picture in terms of information that was obviously pre-COVID. So in that sort of 2020 period, you're looking almost at, income per visits much lower, operational costs, again, much lower in terms of the cost per visit, which in this example on the subsidy position was showing a surplus. And I guess if we look at that intuitively, you're talking from a December to a March period, whereas January, February, March is obviously one of our most positive periods. So again, in terms of 2020, that's what you've got. And then of course, from the COVID period from December 20 to March 21, which is the darker blue sections, you can see here really obviously the impact of being completely facilities closed January through March. Obviously some centres were open in December, and you'll obviously see the impact of those 4 ratios, those 4 KPIs that's shown. And then similarly to how the throughput and participation was in the graphs below, you've then got on the left-hand side, you've got income split between the sort of five, 6 core areas. If you can see it on the screen, the first one, health and fitness. We've then got other income, other indoor income, outdoor activities, swimming lessons and swimming other. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the core areas of expenditure broken down. And so again, in terms of, the picture, what was it telling us? So on the national perspective in 2020, about 2/3 of income came from health and fitness and swimming lessons. And it will be interesting to see how that then recovers going forward. Similarly, over on the expenditure side, as we all expect, the biggest proportion of expenditure in terms of staffing, and just looking at how that changes as we've gone into between COVID and pre-COVID positions. I think as Uktu explained, it's interesting to, 2 points I think is worth saying. One, and I know in terms of the financial parameters, these are always going to reflect the type of centre and the outcomes, for the centres and how they're delivered. We absolutely know these ratios and KPIs are going to be very different for a brand new facility in the middle of a metropolitan area compared to a facility in a more rural area. But I think what none of us have experienced before is how we are going to come out of COVID, how demand's going to come back, income's going to come back. So being able to compare your own centre, your facility, your contract to a national picture will allow you to say, how's my centre doing compared to everybody else? What are the outliers? What's working? What seems to be working? So I think that's really important. I also see, some of these comparisons we can do, and you'll see when Uktu goes into the platform, is when you can start filtering on a month-by-month basis. So you can see the trends going forward. Does this split between fitness and swimming lesson income, is that going to carry on? We all know anecdotally we've had some great feedback in terms of memberships and swimming lessons, but what's it going to look like going forward? And that helps us plan, what do we do maybe outside the leisure centres, the 4 walls of the leisure centres, as well as inside. I also think tracking some of the expenditure is going to be really, really interesting in terms of some of those variable costs. We all know that, we're going to need X amount of staff, and the utility costs in terms of opening facilities, but are we going to have an impact maybe on some equipment costs, repairs and maintenance as we come out of lockdown? Are we going to spend less because our income isn't as high as we were expecting, or actually are we all spending more because the centres haven't been used for a whole number of months? So just looking at these trends and this analysis going forward, I think is going to be really helpful on an individual perspective. I also think, and I know we'll all touch upon this, it'll be worth looking at the interlinkages between the data and between each of the dashboards. So for example, we've obviously got the finance dashboard here, and income may be tracking really well how you expected against your projections. But I guess the question then is, and are the participants the same as pre-COVID? Are we just having our new members coming back, which is great, or is that split? Do we now have new people joining who weren't coming before, but we, and less members rejoining? They may have found alternative ways to take part. So I think a really important part of all of this is how all of this information links together. Thanks. I think, Mike, you're going to talk about customer experience.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, so just to cover off the customer experience survey, which, as we mentioned before, we're just shy of 25,000 responses, which is a good start, but we do still have some major operators that are still to send out their email invites. And Ali from the Moving Community team, letting people know what their response levels are, chasing up people that have got either 0 responses or very low responses. So we're really keen to get those overall numbers up. Now, the dashboard for the customer experience survey is obviously a little bit different to the previous ones, because we don't have any figures for 2020, but we have got some figures from previous MBS and some previous surveys which LeisureNet did during lockdown and between lockdowns in 2020. So on this customer experience dashboard, we've got 4 key indicators which we've identified. So we've got cleanliness of activity areas, cleanliness of changed areas, the confidence indicator, and an NPS. So just to talk you through these, so the cleanliness of activity areas, that 88.27% is an average satisfaction score. So we have a 5-point scale, just as we did with MBS, in terms of people, how satisfied they are with cleanliness, and we then work out what the average score is. So that 88.27 is actually significantly higher than pre-COVID MBS scores for cleanliness. Perhaps not surprising that cleanliness of activity areas has gone up significantly. And likewise, perhaps even more so with the cleanliness of changing areas. And obviously we're conscious that the wet change, for example, is being used to a lesser extent than usual, and that might impact the scores from the people that have experienced the service over the last few weeks, but that is significantly higher. So that average score of 85.58% in terms of satisfaction of cleanliness changing areas is significantly higher than what we were scoring from MBS over the last decade, really. And we've got a new one which we've obviously only started using in the last year, and that's the confidence indicator. Now, it's really important to understand how this is worked out. So what we've done is this question, hopefully you're all familiar with it now, asks people how confident and comfortable they feel with returning to their site during their last visit in terms of COVID-19 protocols and processes. And what we then do is we take the 9 and 10s, the percentage of people that answer 9 or 10, and we did minus the percentage of people that have scored 0 to 6. So for those of you that are familiar with MPS, it's exactly the same calculation that we've applied to this confidence indicator. So the usual caveat that applies with MPS, that this is a tough matrix. So it's really important when you're using this score, reporting it, comparing it between sites or compared to the national average. It's a tough matrix, just like MPS is, because it's the proportion or the ratio of the 9 or 10s versus the 9 or 6s. Now, the interesting thing there is that 59.07% is very similar to the confidence indicators scores that LeisureNet got during our big member surveys during lockdown and in between lockdowns. So in some respects, that's good. It's a little bit higher than we have seen in the past. What's going to be really interesting is to track that, and potentially the next time we do a big survey like this will be September. Obviously, it'd be great to see that score have gone up. And then finally, over on the right-hand side, we've got the Net Promoter Score. So at the moment, we're scoring 51.29. Just to remind everyone again, same sort of way of measuring and working out MPS. It's the percentage of your of your 9 and 10s minus your detractors, your 0 to 6s. And we're ending up with that NPS of 51.29. Now, most of you have probably got an idea of what your own NPS is, so you can now compare that with pre-COVID, and obviously you'll have your NPS from this survey. But I think that's pretty pleasing. It's certainly, over the years that we've been measuring NPS, typically as an industry we're scoring 40 to 50%. So it's good to see that that net promoter score hasn't gone down. Certainly amongst the customers that are returning, they're giving a fairly decent NPS compared to, as I say, previous scores in the sector. A couple of general points about the survey. We've looked at for example, you can see an example of question 1, which is the age question there. When you look at the dashboard, every single question, there's about a dozen questions, you'll get this layout. You get the table on the left and then the graph on the right-hand side. We've just put that age one there as an example. Apologies, but the lawnmower's just come outside my apartment here. It's good timing, isn't it? Apologies if you can hear that in the background. But the point I wanted to make with the age is that we've compared this already with the age range that we get from the participation data through Data Hub and the moving communities, and we've already established that the survey is overrepresented in older age groups, and the survey is also overrepresented in females compared to males. So when we start looking at more depth at the results from the survey and all of the questions we've just got to bear in mind that it's overrepresented, it's biased towards slightly older age groups, but definitely towards more females rather than males have been completing the surveys. But we've got some really interesting figures, and hopefully all of you had a chance to look at the survey. There was 2 sections, as well as the sort of standard ones around satisfaction and cleanliness and activity levels. We also had a section which was around impact and a section around future plans, future activities. I just wanted to share with you 2 that I pulled out this morning. So for example, 84% of respondents said they preferred to exercise at their leisure centre compared to exercising informally. And the second one I pulled out was 88% of people exercise more intensely at their leisure centre than they do typically in informal sessions. And actually, in terms of future use, a really interesting one, 97% of respondents intend to exercise at least once a week over the next 6 months at their leisure centre. So I think what we're getting is that, and perhaps not surprisingly, the people that have come back and completed the survey are very keen, and they're really your loyal customers and your advocates, particularly at the moment in these early weeks. Okay, and I think the next slide is me as well. So I'm just covering off, this is around service delivery, which from a moving communities point of view links with Quest Prime. And Caroline couldn't join us this morning, so I'm just covering her slide for her. So there's 55 sites across the country that have been given an award to carry out the new Quest Prime, which is the Quest Lite version specifically designed for sites as they reopen and recover. All of these assessments at the moment, I think only 17 of them have been done. They all need to be completed by the 5th of July. And for those sites that in their NRRF application put in a written recovery plan, then part of the Quest Prime exercise will be comparing what sites, what local authorities said they were going to be doing as part of this recovery plan compared to what they have been. And for the Quest Prime, the 4 key things that will be pulled through to come so you can see on the dashboard are listed there at the top. So we've got the overall results, which will be on the usual Quest scoring, Quest banding, the overall mystery visit results, the cleanliness and hygiene in terms of the operation systems and practices, and then that customer journey. So whilst there'll be more detail for those sites that have taken part and get their Quest Prime report, in terms of the dashboard, what will automatically pull through into the moving communities dashboard is these 4 key indicators. Okay, so I'm now going to hand back to Utku now, I believe, for the social value dashboard.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Lisa, for the presentations. I think it's really exciting how much data and insight is available now through the platform. As you have seen in the last probably 15 minutes, this is just building on a national picture and just sharing some key highlights we have observed. But obviously now having access to data, participation data from over 20 million individuals in the platform, and also the finance data from the whole sector to help you make better decisions, but also the like customer experience data from people's like experiences in the leisure centers, hopefully as a sector that gives us a huge amount of insight which we will be able to make decisions on. An important part of the moving communities will be also about social value. That's something we have discussed in our various calls earlier in terms of how the participation impacts a lot of different areas of our life, not just in the leisure center, but beyond, in terms of the health variables, in terms of education, crime, or subjective well-being. So social value has been a term we've been using in the past 5 years more and more, and through the platform, this will be also the first time that sector-wide social value will be enabled through the use of the social value calculator and feeding data into the moving communities to start sharing some of these insights with local authorities, operators at the highest level possible. The social value dashboard will be enabled by the end of the month compared to the other parts of the platform. The reason being, we are currently going through a major upgrade of the platform because Sheffield Hallam University, which is one of the partners in the Moving Communities project, have been updating their research on a regular basis. And the latest iteration of that research, which has been published around the end of 2020, is now being imported into the social value calculator that will be feeding the Moving Communities platform. So what are some of the updates, changes that will be reflected in the Moving Communities platform? First of all, the model is now even stronger with a number of new variables added to it. So we have a number of new health conditions like hip fracture, back pain, and risk of injury being added to the overall model. We have also social capital to communities being added as a new variable in there. So it's going to be even a more comprehensive model that will be enabled in the platform. Second, this is a much more inclusive model than the previous version, in the sense of, in the previous version, we had some thresholds that you need to hit to generate any social value. And if you didn't hit that threshold, then you wouldn't generate any social value. Now, through the availability of better data, we are able to go much more specific than that. And this the updated model will be looking at the duration of activity. So that way, we will not be including only people who are above certain threshold, which is the 150 minutes plus in line with WHO guidance, but actually it's going to also include people that are in that fairly active bucket, which is people who are hitting 30 plus minutes and below 149 minutes of activity in the leisure centers. There is also another update in the model, in the sense of it is bringing together the inside and outside activity balance. So in the sense of people not just doing activity within the leisure center, but leisure center activity being part of their wider portfolio is being taken into account as well. And finally, we have some deflators that are being factored in as well, which is about the use of multiple facilities. So if someone is using multiple facilities of the same operator, then that's also taken into account, so not to double count any of that social value generated by that person. So basically, the model is even more accurate, even more consistent, and also more inclusive with the latest updates in there. And currently, the social value calculator update is aimed to be finished by the end of the month, and this will be reflected on the Moving Communities, which is going to give only a high-level version of that information to start sharing some of this insight with the local authorities and operators. I'll pick up any further questions on that one later on, but if we can move to the next slide, please. So this one is quite a busy slide, and I don't want to go into huge detail of this, but this is just to show you that in the platform, we have a number of different user levels and different user privileges to make sure a couple of things. First of all, to make sure we are safeguarding or we are securing people's data with the most relevant access levels. So only people who should have access data to that specific site's information can drill down to that levels, and all other information is shown in the aggregated level. And second thing is we are trying to make sure that the whole sector has access to the most relevant information for their levels of usage within the moving communities platform. I've already seen a number of questions that have come in, so hopefully we'll be able to address some of these things as I present this part and also then go into the platform, but then happy to pick up any future questions on that. So what this slide tells us is we have three main levels of user groups in the platform. One is about the service delivery partners. So it's primarily, it is the operators, basically. Within the operator group, which is that blue section on the left-hand side, we have three different user groups set up for operators. So we have the executive team of the operator who can drill down to any site or any contract within that operator. So has the full view for the operator sites. We have contract manager logins for operators, which are only accessing their specific contract. So if it's a national operator, they can see their own contract within that operator. And we have the leisure center level. So if it's a general manager of the leisure center, they can only see their own data for that leisure center and not the wider operator data. So that's the operator user levels. Then we have the local authority level. Local authority level basically has access to all sites within their own local authority, the sites they own and operated by themselves or by their service provider. And on the national one, the Sport England level, there is not an ability to drill down to any specific site, but it's an aggregated view. But obviously, all of these user levels, as they access certain information at the site or operator or local authority level, can make use of benchmarks that are built into the platform. So that's the second part of that table. So if you are an operator, you are able to benchmark your results against national results, or you can drill down and filter it for a management type. So you can compare your results against, for example, trust-run leisure centers as an average. That's the same for all operator levels. And then when we go into the next stage, the local authority, for local authorities, again, they can benchmark against national or management type based on filtering, but also we have built in the SIPFA statistical neighbors into that one. So local authorities can benchmark themselves to the statistical neighbors, to the average of 15 statistical neighbors, again at an aggregated level. And the national level access, Sport England access, can again make use of national and management type based on their filtering options. A question has come up whether the access levels for consultants, we have actually a separate section this afternoon on that as well, but normally consultants would be given access to their own client's dashboard. So if they are working with a specific operator, they might be given the same level of access as their operator to themselves, or if it's a local authority client of theirs, they can access the platform at the local authority level based on the permissions given by the local authority users or their clients. So this is all between obviously the consultants and their respective clients that have access to that one. As I will move from here into the platform, but these user levels will also be available in the Moving Communities website. So if you have any questions about who can see what, how your data is secured, or any other questions, we can all address that through this table or directly at the end of this presentation. Mike, if we go to the next one. So here I want to jump into the platform. I mean, this is just a screenshot from the summary dashboard, but hopefully you will be able to get all of that view yourself when you access the platform's dashboards. So Mike, I will, if that's okay, switch to my screen. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now. So I'm on my demo account, and on the demo account, I will be sharing with you some of the views that you can access in the platform. And so far, we have shown you more the national view, which you can access and filter for, but also how you can use the filters to get your specific views for your operator or for your local authority. I will be just showing you very quickly how you can do that one. This is also going to pick up a couple of questions that are raised in the channel. I think it might be timely when we pick up those questions and address a couple of them. So the screen that you see on my window is basically the screen for the operator to see all of their sites, which you had access to before as well. And you could see basically the different sites you have. You can enter their finance data and participation data. So that's what you have been using so far within the platform. So when we go to the specific like dashboard screens, you will be enabled all these left-hand side dashboards within your account, and you will be able to click through them. So everything in those dashboards are controlled by the filter section, which you have exactly the same view as mine, but obviously as per the user levels we discussed, if you are local authority, then you have your own sites. If you are operator, you have your own sites and contracts. So this is customizable to your own view. So on the filter section, we have always two filters in the platform, the one on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, I'm using this for my own filtering. So this is my local filter. And here, what I've done is I've selected a single site of mine. So here I can select multiple sites, or if I'm an operator view, I can click the all button and switch that to the all of my leisure centers average. Or if I'm a local authority, then again, I can do the same for my local authority. So currently I have set it up to a single site in here. And from a date filtering perspective, you can either click this button and set it to rolling months. So that means every month your data will be updated with the new data coming into the platform. Or you can set it to a specific time frame like I have in here. So if I set this to March 20 to April 21, that will create me the picture for the full financial year in there. And I've seen a question that has come up earlier. Where you have the information about, the question about, would the 2020 versus 21 picture relevant? The way we have presented you before the picture was from what we call as national 2020 was the time period from April 2019 to March 2020. So the whole pre-lockdown period. And then the second picture, which we named the filter for 21, was the picture from April 2020 to March 21. So that way, the two time periods were just before and after a full financial year rather than the calendar year. But again, you have the full date filters available for you, so you can play with these filters and change them as you like. There is also an option on top of the page where you can edit your filter name. So I'm completely free. If I can call this my site, and I can change my second filter to be national 2021. So I can change the naming convention of that and save it any way I like. In terms of the right-hand side, in my second filter, you can, as you have seen here, that's set up to the national filter, and you can again change the date filters in here as well. What's most important is each time the left-hand and right-hand side of the filters should have the same number of months to compare. So you cannot, for example, compare a single month against the full year. It needs to be always the same time period, not necessarily exactly the same months, but it should be the same number of months to make it comparable in there. So this is my filtering section. So when I submit my filters, how does it feed into the different platform screens? So this is a view from my participants dashboard. So on the participants dashboard, currently, because I set it up to a demo site versus national, the actual figures are less comparable. But again, you can change your filters here to make it one of your sites against another site of yours, or a contract versus a contract based on your own contracts. But the second part of the platform is quite nice representation in here. So here, what I can see is how my site's gender breakdown compares to the national numbers. So I have slightly higher representation of the female participants in my leisure centers compared to the rest of the sector. And again, if I look at the age groups, what I'm seeing in here is my site is overly represented in the younger age groups, but in the right-hand side, the national one has a better distribution of different age segments as well. On the deprivation side, for my selected site, what I can see is I have a higher representation of the lower socioeconomic segments or lower deprivation areas, whereas national picture represents a higher distribution or better distribution of the different deprivation groups. Similarly, you can do the same on the Throughput tab, so you can see how your Throughput numbers compare to the rest of the sector. Again, because I'm comparing a single site to the national on this specific one, the most relevant ones are the percentage breakdowns, but you can make this more specific to your leisure center if you compare two of your leisure centers or like one contract against another. Finance tab. This is all comparable because obviously here all numbers are based on income per visit, operating cost per visit. So even if you are comparing a single site against the national numbers, you would still get relevant comparisons. So you can see how your demo site's income per visit or operating cost per visit differs compared to the rest of the sector. And this site is a good example on that. So what you are seeing here is a significantly higher income per visit for this operator in the past 12 months, but at the same time, a higher operating cost per visit. So when you look at the subsidy numbers, they are closer to the national average in that 12-month period. And from a cost recovery perspective, it is below the national numbers in there. You can also compare your income breakdown and expenditure breakdown by area compared to rest of the sector as well. I'm seeing a couple of questions about not having access to dashboards tab. Yes, that's correct. So we are organizing these workshops this week, today and Thursday. So by the end of those training sessions or those workshops, we will be enabling it as of this Friday. So you will have all of these sections at the end. And in terms of the other question about saving filters, so once you save your filters, as I have done in here, every time you come back to the platform, they will be remembered and they will be opened with the last saved filters. We won't save your previous filters. So when you have changed your filters, you need to change it back to whatever you have selected before. But in terms of the speed of dashboards, I mean, usually that even in the first run, all of your dashboards should be there below 30 seconds. So hopefully this should give you an opportunity to play with filters and get most relevant views. There has been a couple of questions about how do you compare yourself against the most relevant, so the like-for-like comparisons. I've seen a couple of people raising question about, can I get the most relevant view for my local authority or for my contract? So here your options are, if you are a local authority user, so if I'm on this account and this is a local authority user, what you can do is you can select your left-hand side filter to be your local authority picture. So I'm just selecting a random local authority in here, which will give me basically my averages for that local authority. And on the right-hand side of this, what I can do is I can select, for example, the SIPFA nearest neighbors. So this is the statistical 15, the average of statistically neighbors for that local authority. So you would get basically a relevant picture in terms of more relevant than your national picture possibly, or more filtered version of that. So that's for local authorities. For operators, and I've seen Martin's question in there, we are not using the family groups anymore. That was the case in the old MBS just because of the changing amount of data from different groups of the sector being fed in. So for operators, the filtering options are, you can either get the national picture and compare yourself against the national picture, or you can compare it against a management type. So you might select here the management type filter and you can compare it all trust averages. as the platform evolves, as we get more data, further filtering options might be made available over time. So there can be more specific ones, but at that stage, our aim is to make sure everybody gets enough insight at the aggregated level, but we are keeping the filtering options to the maximum that can be generated now. But as I said, the platform is ever evolving, so we can in the future have further filtering options as well. There was another question about the national picture. When we talk about national, because this is a Sport England fed project currently, when we refer to national, we are referring to England sites. So it's not including other home nations yet, but there are discussions with other home nation funding bodies like Sport Wales, Sport Scotland, potentially to extend the borders of the project to home nations as well. But currently, when you select national, it is England only. In terms of the other dashboards that we have referred to on the section that Mike presented, so on the customer experience one, again, you can adjust your filters in here. You can get your demo site versus national view. If you are an operator, you get the full breakdown of all questions in here for your operator only or for your individual site. So you can actually see the full distribution of the responses in here, and you can compare it to the national or management type based on figures. So that's again available on your operator logins. And for local authorities, you have a similar view, but rather than every single question, we have selected a number of questions that are most relevant for local authority clients, which is a trimmed down version of the operator screen, but you still get the most important KPIs on that page. And the service delivery one is basically coming from the Quest assessments. An important note in here, because Quest assessments are not done monthly, the date filters don't apply here. So when you are basically coming to this page, you will always get the full view from your own leisure centers or from your own operator or local authority. So basically, it will always show you the last 12 months of the data generated by your centers versus the sector, because obviously you don't do the Quest assessments multiple times. There will be little benchmark data if we were going to filter it for a specific month, and that wouldn't be really relevant. So that's the logic behind the service delivery dashboards. Final one on the map screen. So basically you have the map view here as well, where you can, I mean, obviously I'm on the national account and demo account right now. In your own view, you will be able to select a specific site, focus into that specific site, and basically get the view for your site and the participation data around your facilities. At the moment, I have all sites open on this one. If you are going to an operator account, you will only see your own sites in there, and you will be able to apply different boundaries like the ward boundaries on top of that. So you can see where the participation is coming from. I can filter a little bit more in here. And also you can add additional layers like, for example, deprivation areas in here, and you can see the 20% most deprived areas around your facilities, and you can see where your participation is coming from these 20% deprived areas. And what you can also do is you can remove the participation layer from here, and you can add a number of like context layers on the back of the platform. So if you want to see, for example, as an operator, if you would like to put an intervention in place together with your local authority client to deal with obesity in children, you can put a context layer on the back of the platform about the reception level children and their obesity rates, and you can see areas around your facilities with the highest risk of obesity, and you can put an intervention in place. So that's all available in the mapping section for you to play with, to change your filters, and also to look at specific interventions you can put in place based on your strategy. So that's basically everything about the platform. I know it's been a very quick whistle-stop tour in here, but what we tried to show you in here is you can get national level insights, which we have shared in the earlier stages of our presentation, but also by using the relevant filters for your local authority, for your operator, you can get important insights from the platform specific to your sites compared to the rest of the sector. And the user levels will always secure that your data is safe, never identifiable at the site level or operator level. So all benchmarks are at the aggregated level at all times, but also giving you some good insights to take certain actions on it. So I'll stop here and switch to Lisa to share some of the next steps and where we go from here.
Thanks, Uktu. I think we're just waiting to
I'll just
come out of that. Yeah, pop back into the main presentation. Thanks. As always, Uktu takes us through those. He makes it look super simple and that we can filter from A to B and get all the data we need. And I guess it's going to all of us just having a play with the dashboards, our own data, and just understanding what it's all about. And I think this is the the crucial element. We all know there's a lot of data in there, and it's us being able to interpret it, use it for all those people who are outside what we do on a day-to-day basis to explain what's happening and to make evidence-based decisions. Hopefully you'll all have the tools then to be able to influence your decision makers, whether it's your client officers, whether it's client officers having to convince directors of finance, whether it's speaking to sector in terms of public health, internal colleagues. This is what this data really is all about, and it's that really important bit in the middle, which is the intelligence that everybody can bring to the data to then plan going forward and having some real insight that's then actionable. I think we're really aware at the moment as a sector that we are focusing on financial recovery. I absolutely know in a number of local authorities where leisure has gone a little bit under the radar because the management fees haven't been huge, or in some circumstances there's been surpluses. All of a sudden over the last 18 months the financial ask for the sector has been huge. So hopefully this data isn't just about the finances, it's much wider than that. It's who are using the facilities, it's the customer experience, the confidence, and it will enable all of us, whether it's on a centre level or whether it's all the way through to Sport England talking to DCMS, to understand how well the sector is recovering. I guess being honest in terms of, are we meeting the outcomes that the service in each local authority area is looking to do? But as Uktu's just demonstrated just now, it's as we recover and we get the data on a month-by-month basis, we can actually forward plan and we can look to recover. I also think this data is going to be really helpful from the sector's perspective to help dispel some of the myths and some of the statements that have gone into the sector about, how long it's going to take to recover, what type of management model is good, bad or indifferent. This is the evidence, this is the data that we can use to present the case. I'm really excited to understand, as we said, not just the finances, but who are using the centres. We've had some really interesting early indications of a lot of new users joining in the last month or so. And it's just to see how that progresses going forward. I think this data will enable us to use, to allow sector partners, we're still looking there for National Leisure Recovery Fund 2. And I think this data and this recovery data will help us do that. And importantly, I think we can use this data to speak as a sector with one voice, with one coherent set of information going forward, which is massively important. So it's down to all of us, from a centre perspective through to local authorities, through to up through to government, to use our intelligence from the data to make some evidence-based decisions. Thanks, Uktu.
So I'd just like to say thank you very much for our panel today, for Mike, Lisa and Uktu, some really good information there. This is being recorded and we will put the recording out via the social media channels so that you'll be able to pick up and follow some of the guidance that we've given you so you can see where to travel, particularly on that mapping activity that Uktu covered there. Some really, really fascinating insights within that. So we've got to say thank you to everybody. It's a great support so far. We've really all worked very, very hard to make this work. If you do have any challenges around logins or sites, please get in contact with Ali. She has put her email address in the chat box a couple of times and will do towards the end of the presentation. So get in contact with Ali and we'll do our our best to get that sorted as quickly as we can. This is about building blocks, and we do need to continue pushing for updates of financial information and, of course, the participation in the customer experience survey. You know, the 25,000 responses we've had so far is great for a national picture, but if you as a site are only looking at 10 responses to the survey, or as a contractor 50 responses to the survey, you really can't have massive confidence in your results. So please, can you nudge your customers? Can you get that resent to people that have used you in the last 3 weeks, so that you can get some really strong insight about the customers that are returning and what they think about the services that you're offering. And also, just not a plea, but a request from us. We are going to start creating weekly and bi-weekly infographics. You can see an example on the screen there. It is only an example, so the data is part data, it's not full data yet. But we'll be emailing this to everybody we've got an email contact for. And we'll also be sharing this on our Twitter page and our LinkedIn page. And there will be a registration page on the website, movingcommunities.org, for people to register if they want to receive these infographics on a weekly and bi-weekly basis, just so that we can keep informing people, so you can start really understanding what's going on from the picture that we're seeing. So if we just go to the last slide, we're now moving into questions. And we do have a question to start us off with, and a question to Mike, if you're ready, Mike. Ange asked, 16 to 24-year-olds do not tend to complete online surveys. Should we be looking at different ways to gather these views?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Yeah, very good question. And I think the results that we've got in terms of that age profile that I showed you obviously backs that up, that older age groups tend to gravitate towards completing those online surveys. I guess there was a few factors that made us go down the online route initially. The main one being, you know, ease of completion. Obviously, it'd be much more difficult to do something face to face at the moment. We didn't want bits of paper. We're conscious of the workload of you know, for receptionists and leisure centre staff. We didn't want to get them running around completing paper-based surveys or telephone surveys either. So I guess the main thing is that we're conscious of that, and we know that we can take that into account, that caveat, when we're looking at the results. More importantly, I guess going forward, we knew that this is the first time a survey of this sort has taken place over so many sites, and everyone asking the same standardized question. So that there's been some really good learnings from it. The chances are that the next national survey will take place in September, and certainly by then I would hope that we can be a little bit more creative in how we implement the survey and make sure that it is more inclusive. And the final thing I'd mention is that we had those of you who are familiar with the survey know there's a question towards the end where we asked people if we can do a follow-up survey by SMS. We got a really good response rate to that, with around 50% of people giving us permission to do a bit of follow-on tracking via SMS. So we're going to finalise our plans and let people know what we're going to be doing about that follow-up SMS survey, which may well take place before the summer. And I think that is likely to focus on particular groups. It may be younger groups, and it may be groups from you know, in low seg groups. We yet to be decided, but when we do that, that would certainly pick up, you know, much better response rates from those 16 to 24-year-olds. So to sum up, yes, we're very aware of that and learned a lot from the first survey. So we'll be doing things, you know, going forward over the next 9 months to make sure that we get a better view from those younger people as they return.
Cheers, thanks very much, Mike. Stephen's just mentioned that he's logged onto the Moving Communities LinkedIn page and got Melissa's website message, so I'll check that. I certainly, I'm not having that problem at my end, but we'll check that for you, Stephen, as soon as we've finished on here. Okay, could you just respond? I know you've put a chat message in there for Lee about how people can check the response level from the survey. Would you mind just giving a verbal answer to that as well, please?
Yes, sure. So thank you for the question, Lee. So as soon as the dashboards are enabled, when you go to the customer experience dashboard with the right filtering, under each question we have a total responses. So if you look at, for example, how old are you question, you can see the distribution of responses with the total count, which will give you the total responses. But we, as the message came in, we just took a note of that as well. So we will be also able to enable that in your site list. So in terms of adding the column in there to show you the total response count, so you can also, as an operator, track that one. So yeah, two ways.
Thank you. And Pritesh asked, can they create their own infographics for LA sites? Now, I'm guessing we can't do that directly out of the platform, but we are comfortable for people to share their own information?
Yeah, so I was going to pick that up. So thank you, Pritesh, for that question. So you can't generate a fully designed infographic directly from the platform, as we will be generating those weekly insights. But what you can do is every graph and every table in the platform is exportable as a PDF, as a JPEG or PNG, as an image. So you can take those up from the platform and put it into your presentations, or you can download them if it's a table as an Excel table and do more on it. You will never be able to obviously download the raw data. You will only get whatever you are seeing on your screen, but at least it gives you a number of options to export tables and graphs to put it into different set of outputs in there.
Excellent, thank you, Aku. And just to give some clarity, if you look at the graph on the dashboard, there's a little arrow pointing down in the top right-hand corner. If you click on that, that will give you the options to pull out those graphs as described by Aku there. So I'm just checking to see if we have any more questions. Thank you, Mike, for putting in the Sarah Forster's email address within the chat box. So Sarah Forster is currently running the customer experience survey. So if anybody's got any queries or questions around the survey, please get in contact with Sarah. So if you are looking in the chat box, you'll see a number of email addresses in there, because Utku has also put one in around Data Hub for access for new accounts and email support to support at Data Hub. So that will also help out on access levels and those types of things. Have we got any more questions? I think we've covered off everything within the chat box. A couple of those questions are going to be answered directly by Emma Bernstein via email. But all of the others, I think we've crossed off. So does anybody have any further questions for us, please?
Dave, just one that I picked up, might not be responded in the chat yet. Lucy has asked, how do we remove a site that has been put on your system? It isn't relevant. So all sites are basically being picked through the NLRF and also Sport England's list of the in-house operators. So if there is any site in there, again, please email us via the support links and we will have a direct conversation with you and Sport England, and we can take that site off the list or make any changes required.
Thank you, Akim. Okay. Well, there doesn't appear to be any more questions coming through. So I will just do a reminder that the website is available at movingcommunities.org. Twitter is movingcommunit1, and the LinkedIn page is Moving Communities. And thank you, Stephen. I will check that page as soon as I've finished here. So we will share this recording via those social media channels. So thank you to everybody who's joined us today. We were 174 at the peak of our usage. So good numbers today. Thank you very much. And we will see you all soon. Thank you for your time. Take care all. Bye-bye.